Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Global Atheist from Skeptic Happen. This episode is focused on parenting as an atheist and comparing religious parenting and non-religious parenting. For this episode, there's me who grew up in a religious parenting, but I turned out an atheist. We have Rafael who was religious but became atheist after having kids, and he's having parenting his kids as an atheist. Then we have Anne, who was parenting her kids religiously but is not anymore. So let's begin. Heyo,
Hey.
heyo. I think we should firstly introduce ourselves for whoever is watching us for the first time on this channel. We'll go in a cyclic way. I think alphabets is an easy way to follow because it is pretty straightforward. Let me introduce. I'm Zandriyat and my legal name is Aditya and can find me Zandriyat over the internet. I am from India. My parents are Hindus. They are still Hindus. I'm not. So I grew up in a Hindu parenthood. And then there's Anne. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Apostate Anne of the Apostate of Mine podcast. And if you kind of know a little bit about our story, I wasn't raised religious, but was raised with a religious community. And so I did believe. And then we were raising our children as Christians. And we recently deconverted in the last few years. And so we had to rethink how we were parenting our children.
That's cool. And Raphael.
Hi, I was raised in a religious background. My family was, well, still is Catholic. I had my children, and they were about 1 year old and 2 year old when I became an atheist. So I had to make a huge paradigm shift from my household to what I'm gonna raise my children as. Right, that was about 13 years ago. So you know.
Okay, nice. Okay. I mean, when you mentioned about turning at this after your kids, you had kids. It was under the assumption that they're quite young, but now it sounds like they're teenagers. Okay, that's cool. So, and you did not grow up in a religious household, but you grew up in a religious community. So, how did that difference come up? And I assume you turned Christian somewhere in your life.
Yeah, so I bring that up because I know a lot of atheists or even agnostic people who don't want to direct their kids too much and don't want to say too much, but just kind of like want their kid to decide on their own. But if you leave it up to what they're being exposed to, I mean, it's very easy, especially if you're in a Bible Belt area, to be led towards Christianity because what you believe is so much based on where you grew up, right? And so it wasn't that much different because I think my parents believed too, but they just weren't pushing it down. Like they weren't teaching me, you have to wait till marriage or you have to be baptized or any of the core traditions of Christianity. But I was still raised, let's pray to God. And, if you believe that
Oh,
God can help you and let's pray for healing, those kind of ideas.
okay. It makes sense. I mean, that's something I can relate to a bit. Like my parents are religious, they're still religious, but they're also not that pushy about the religion, and they know that I'm an atheist and all. Like I turned atheist when I was a teen, so they are aware that I'm an atheist. And when I visit home and they are in their rituals and all, I do participate because it's not hurting anyone. It's just maintaining the relation with my parents. That doesn't matter much. But yeah, I do get what you're pointing at. That's cool. And Raphael, what made you turn in it after having kids?
Well, I'm a enthusiast, if you wanna call it like that. I love reading. and I had a whole swath of well, strange beliefs. I believe that astrology could pretty much tell me the character of people and in some way their fate. I believe that witchcraft was real. I believed in paranormal phenomena like ghosts and mental powers like psychokinesis and telekinesis and telepathy and stuff like that. I had a really messed up bunch of beliefs, and I then learned how to think scientifically and logically and skeptically. So I analyzed each and every one of my beliefs, or I tried to, and started not discarding, but removing the steam from those beliefs that I can come up with good reasons or evidence to think that they were true. So, as long as I didn't find good reason or evidence for one of those beliefs, I would put it on hold until I got a good reason to believe it or a good reason to deny it. And eventually, I became a positive atheist. I am that kind of atheist that affirms and try and embraces the burden of proof, trying to demonstrate that no God can exist and that there are no such thing as supernatural phenomena. There is no such thing as telekinesis, psychokinesis, witchcraft, etc., as a real phenomena of the world, other than people that call themselves witches and wizards and stuff like that. No, so it was a journey, a long journey. It's recent that I became a positive atheist, actually.
Hmm.
Makes sense. Since Acha, I have two questions, but let's handle one question first. Since you both turned atheist in a much later phase of your life, so I'm sure you have friends and family who knew you as Christians and then they know you as atheists. How did they handle that change? I mean, I'm asking this because I turned atheist at an age when my identity was still forming about people's perception of me. So people have known me as an atheist from the beginning. So I did not
Mhm.
have to face that, but I'm sure you had faced that difference in their perception.
Yeah. So I have friends from college who knew me and they were actually atheists, and I was always the
Ah,
one like talking to them about God and all of that. So this we recently had a reunion, 20-year reunion, and I kind of
ah,
came out to them like,
nice.
"Hey guys, I don't believe anymore." And I was surprised that they weren't shocked. They were like, "Yeah, we've always known you're very open to different cultures and ideas and beliefs." So I was like, for me, it was such a drastic change of who I was, but for them, it was in line with who I was. So I just thought that was interesting.
Yes.
In my case, in particular, I was always the guy that stated something like, "Well, actually," so I'm
I do that a
I'm
bit as
always
well.
the annoying guy, so they don't see me any different. They just know that I'm an atheist now.
I have that habit a bit as well. I can relate to it.
Yeah.
And since both of your parents are, as I think both of your parents are still religious, I'm assuming.
Yes. 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 Yes.
Yes.
Hmm,
Cool.
yeah.
No,
And
not me. I feel like
okay. Acha,
um
you mentioned right. Sorry.
well my mom, she grew up very, very religious. And so she didn't raise me that way, but she didn't really speak out against it. She didn't ever share her own story. She was just very quiet my whole life. She never said anything about it. So I didn't know how she believed. And then my dad was the one very spiritual, very new age, like that kind of belief, metaphysical, like that. And both of them now, I would say, don't believe in religion, don't believe in any of that. So I kind of challenged their beliefs and led them to be very critical of religion now, surprisingly. So it can happen.
Ah, that's That's nice. That's nice. I have a strange position with me on with my parents on that because, like I as I said, I turned it is quite early, so it's not that it's something that happens suddenly. In fact, atheism has a stigma in India. Most people don't even know who what an atheist is. So there's a lot of people who didn't understand. So my parents did fall on that category for a while. Even I did. Like I was atheist for like 4 or 5 years before I knew that that label exists. One day I discovered that label. Oh wait,
Mm.
that's me. That's cool. So
Huh.
that was my introduction to atheism at all. So while my friends and all never had that differentiation because by the time their process of me formed, they already knew that okay, he's an atheist. But although my parents knew I'm an atheist, they have a middle ground. Like they have a hope that maybe I'll change or maybe not. But then they are not exactly pushy about it. They never have been pushy, to be honest. But then again, when they're having some rituals and all, they do expect me to participate, and I don't fight that because it's not hurting anyone. But so there's that. That's a strange position there. They're not exactly forcing me, but they're also hoping me to have a change. And I
Mhm.
am also, I'm also open about it. And whenever conversations come up and we have disagreements, not fights, but disagreements, I do point my side of the story and why they are wrong. And it usually ends up with not agreeing, but not to the fight. It's like when they find out that okay, I have a point, they don't fight it, but they don't change their mind either. So that's a
Mm.
very strange position. And yeah, sorry.
I just can't wait to hear about your perspective on parenting, as secular, because I live in a community with a lot of Indian people and
Ah,
they're amazing parents. Like they're always out playing with their kids and there's so much positive about it. So I'm interested to hear your perspective of some of the harms or negatives that can come from that belief as well.
yes. Yeah, I think we should go there. Before we go there, I'll circle back to that, but I should introduce the how Indian parenting works a bit. It's quite different from European and American style of parenting. Indian parents, in general, not in just in terms of religion, in general, are a bit strict about how they want their kids to be. It's not just India; it's
Mhm.
a common theme in South and East Asian nations, including India, where parents like to tell who their kids are supposed to be instead of letting their kids find out. So it's a common thing.
Mm.
And the good side of it is that yeah, you will find Indian parents spending a lot of time with their kids, more time, more care and involvement compared to the Western society. But the downside
Mhm.
of it is that you don't really have much privacy and independence. It's a very
Mm.
conformative society where you do what your parents tell you to, and so disagreeing to that, it's not easy, but I'll say I was a bit lucky about it because, as I said, I didn't exactly have to had to fight with my parents. Like we have a lot of disagreements on a lot of grounds, but it's not a fight. It's just a disagreement. I have an
Mhm.
advantage that I don't live with my parents, which is also a common thing in Indian households where kids usually live with their parents. uh, it's a 50-50 scenario. So what I mean by that is when we are working and let's say the company is whatever company you are working at is not in the same locality where your parents are, then you are expected to move out and go out there and all. But at the end of the day, you end up living in the same house you own because when you're working out, you're not exactly buying a house or anything. In most cases, unless you're super rich, which most of us aren't, you're living a rent, so that's not exactly your house. Your house is usually with your parent. I, on the other hand, although I work remotely, I don't live with my parents, so I have a little leeway with that. That I'm not exactly dealing with them every day. Of course, I talk to them over the phone every day, but it's not the same. So there's that. That's a little
Mhm.
insight into the Indian parenting thing.
Yeah, it's
But
good.
yeah, and my perception of parenting is a bit different because I personally don't want to get married. Like it's pretty decided that I won't get married. My parents do want me to, but I luckily haven't reached the optimal age where I'm expected to marry, so I haven't faced that conversation in that seriousness. It comes up and I ignore it, and they ignore it, hoping for me to change my mind when the actual time comes. But I personally don't want to get married, and I maybe consider adapting some time in the later ages, but at least not having my own kids. That's what my thought is, because I feel like we're already overpopulated and there are way too many kids who are suffering. Instead of, like, I can just help them instead of having my own. So that's my look. But of course I will not tell that others should not have kids. It's a natural emotion. Like, being a parent is a very primal feeling that humans are born with, that the feeling of wanting to raise their own kids. So I'm not against that. I just don't want to do that myself. This that but Why did you decide to parent your kids in a non-religious way? Because both of you turned atheist after being parents. So that's something I'm curious about. Because what happens in general is kids follow their parents too. So if you, even if you are an atheist, if you have religious parents and you have been brought up in a certain way, you are kind of, you, since you don't exactly have a rule book to it, you kind of follow what your parents did and have a little remix of that. But what made you change your mind, and how you're handling that situation, especially because I think both of you are live in a religious background. So even if you are not religious and your parents are not going, so your kids are not going in a religious household, their friends are, so they might be having that conversation.
I mean, what changed my mind is just realizing that it wasn't true. And that's how we started to change how we were parenting, because there was so much that religion influenced on our parenting. So I actually prepared a slide about the harms of religious parenting, just to kind of review how we used to parent and then like how it was different. Please chime in, if there's anything you have to share. But first, I want to say that I think it's important to note that, first of all, how you're raised is so crucial to who you are, right? So even though we have a part of us that's already built, your your upbringing, your teachings, all of that play such a major part in who you are. And there's so many positive things that come from religious parenting. I want to note, just like spending time with your kid. I know that with prayer, Bible study, they're spending time with your kids. The spending time part is good. Continue with that. Just maybe not, since the Bible's not true, just replacing that, but still spending time with your children is great. Teaching about avoiding harmful things, great. Teaching about loving, forgiving, those are all great teachings. Just doesn't have to be religious based. It doesn't necessarily come from religion, right? You can do that without it. So with that said, I think one big thing for me was that the Bible teaches submission, not just for women, although that's very much in there, but for men too. You have to submit to this authority, this higher power, and it just changes your ability to question things or to speak up of things that seem doubtful. And those are your formative years when you're growing up. So you're already being conditioned to shut up, go along, um, just don't question.
Because I said so.
Exactly. Because
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah.
above you.
That was a main topic in my house, and I think that's a main answer in, well, religious parenting, and not only religious parenting. Many people may think that that is a perfectly reasonable answer to a question from a child that's stating something like, "Well, why do I have to go to sleep right now? Because I said so." Well,
Yeah, yeah.
spoiler, it's not. Yeah, because I said so is not a reason,
Mm,
and
Yeah, yeah.
that's precisely the first bullet point there. Teach submission. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
living with your knee bent. Yeah,
mm.
and Not only that, they teach you that obedience is the maximum good,
Yeah.
and disobedience is the maximum evil. Adam and Eve's story point that out perfectly. And that's how you nurture, well, potential abuse victims.
Definitely. It's preparing you for potentially being like a conspiracy theorist or, falling into a cult or any other belief that can be
I'm going
wrong
far
and
worse than
harmful.
that. I'm going far worse than that there, and because thing is, they you in a when you're in a religious household, you understand authority, and you have to follow and be obedient to authority, especially your parents. But well, then you kind of into you have an intuition about hierarchy. Okay,
Mhm.
so your parents have a hierarchy over you, but when you see your parents talking with a priest, they're submissive to the priest. So the priest has a higher authority than your parents.
Mhm.
And if the priest tells you, come into my office with a closed door, you have no way to say no because he's a higher authority. And they have taught you throughout your few years of life that you have to obey. That's why what I mean by fertile ground for abuse.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So true.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. And the other thing that comes up with when you like it's also this parenting concept is also used by religious bodies outside of parenting as well. When it's, if you do question them, then it's just not because I told you so, because it's like God told you so and I'm his messenger. So that's the same format that gets followed up, that you get prepared for through your
Oh well,
parenting. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
yeah. Following the same hierarchy, if God says something, there's no higher authority than that.
yeah,
If God says it, you just have to follow. Doesn't matter if it tells you something stupid.
yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and
that's
they
very true.
teach you not to question. That's a particular part of the Bible, and Mark knows this better than me, because well, I'm not I don't study the Bible that much, but as far as I can tell, they teach you not to doubt. Trust not in your own understanding. Okay, so don't think,
Exactly.
Yeah,
follow.
Don't
yeah.
think for yourself. And
Yeah.
it's even worse for women who now they're under the man. So it's like another tier of hierarchy, even more so as a woman, you're being conditioned to not only is disobeying bad and obeying good, but then also serving your man and providing children and being this like Stepford wife is good, and being independent or outspoken or challenging or any of those things is bad.
Yeah. That's a very good point. I was about to go there because uh, religious households are also very patriarchal, because almost all religions are patriarchal. So it's not just don't question your parents and don't question gods. It's also watching your mother not questioning your father, and which is not
Mhm.
questioning her husband. So yeah, that form of submission, especially when you are a you're not a boy, especially when you are a girl, you also taught to don't question your brothers, don't question your father, don't question your male relatives and stuff. So that's
Mm.
an added layer of that confirmation, that
Yeah,
submission tactic.
yeah, we are right because we have a penis.
Right.
Yeah.
Because my chromosomes are XX.
Yes, exactly. So that's one of the things, subservience, right?
Yeah, because God is
That's
a he somehow.
so ingrained in our culture that it's appalling that it goes beyond religious parenting. Yeah, it becomes part of day-to-day life here in Mexico. It took decades to change a bit.
Yes, I recently went to Mexico and I was so impressed with how there's commercials now saying like men help out around the house, like change a diaper, do some dishes. It's not the woman's job. It's a partnership. Help out. And I think that's amazing. Like you need somebody to tell you, hey, you don't have to fall into these roles. You can help out because that's toxic for the family when the woman's doing all this work and yet she doesn't have a voice. And so that kind of leads to the next point where it can cause tension in the marriage. Like I know on paper it seems like it's logical, like you've got to have a CEO, you've got to have a leader, and it's if you have too many cooks in the kitchen, that causes tension or confusion. That's how they paint it. But then also you have managers that are or people that are specialists in their own areas, and there's many areas that the woman or wife can be more knowledgeable or skillful in a certain topic, and it's a strength to use that advantage or strength of hers. It's a strength in the marriage. So
Um,
anyway, when the woman's being told to be quiet and all that, there's constantly this submission struggle because it's just not in line with how
um,
you feel.
I like the word. I don't know if in English it has the same meaning or the same like etymological aspect, but couple in Spanish it's called it's you can say it as pareja, yeah, and pareja it's par,
A pair.
on par, yeah. A couple is on par. It's a partnership,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. In my household, uh, I'm not the one that makes the decisions. My wife is not the one that makes the decisions. Reason helps us take a decision together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's pretty different. There is no
Very different.
household head. We are the team. We are a team. Yeah, we take decisions together.
And I
That's
mean, obviously, any marriage is going to have tension and struggles and all of that that are not necessarily related to just religion.
Yep.
But man, if you take that idea off the table, it just helps you be able to have those confrontations and reason, as you said, Rafa, like reason through the problem and make a decision together. You're probably going to make better decisions than one person just leading with their own reason, and that's it.
This brings up a good question that I have in mind, which is since once again both of you turned atheists after having kids, which means you were married when you were not an atheist.
Hmm.
How like were your spouses atheists before, or did they turn atheists with you? How did that work? That's something that a question I'm very curious about now.
Rafa, you want to go first?
Sure. Well, my wife uses no label, but she's more of an agnostic atheist now. Yeah,
Oh.
but although she was never very devout, her family was, especially her sister, which painfully passed away a few months ago.
Mm.
Oh,
So my wife is like she doesn't take a position upon the existence of God. She's just like thinks about stuff really deeply and gets to her own conclusions. We talk little about atheism because, well, in 13 years, whatever little we talk, it's a lot. It adds up to a lot. So her position is quite clear. Well, I don't know. I don't think there is, but I don't know. I'm open. Yeah. I state that no God can exist, but okay. I also state that I can be wrong. So,
Mm-hmm.
and while we met each other, I don't know how she. I have no idea. If there is a proof that any God exists, is that my wife fell in love with me. I don't know how. Really.
Yeah, and mine was interesting too because I started deconverting first. And even before, when I was a believer, there was still points of the Bible that I didn't agree with, and my husband did, and so we kind of struggled. This is a perfect example. Let me share this story. So when we were religious, I was always very open to homosexuals. I didn't really buy the whole they're going to hell thing, but my husband did. And we agreed that because he's the man and he's the leader, we were going to raise our children like that. And that I just wasn't going to say anything to them about that. And that's what we did. And when I started doubting and going on my own path, I told my husband he was still very much a believer, but eventually went on his own path. And we ended up slowly becoming atheists together. So then we had to come out to our kids and be like, hey, all that stuff we've been teaching you, yeah, we don't believe that anymore. And the biggest thing was this homosexual topic. The third point on there is that, my kids were judging their friends that were homosexual, but they still loved them. And so it was hard for them to reconcile that. And so when we told them, hey, that's not true about God sending homosexuals to hell and that he doesn't like that, that was so logical to them. They're like, oh, I can just embrace my friend and I can just like my friend. It was so easy for them to let go of that judgment and hating mentality.
In my case, about homosexuality, I was a bigot. Huge. Huge. 15 years ago, I actually said out loud stupid things like, it's not natural. And yeah, with that voice, and I was that stupid. And fortunately, I didn't raise my kids with that idea. And what happened was I was always open. Well, humans are there is diversity in humanity, and there's diversity in sex, and there's diversity, period. And even at a pretty young age, I don't know, 5, 6, we walk down the streets and there are couples, cis couples and homosexual couples. My children couldn't care less. Like,
yeah.
really, just like any other. Oh, look, dope. So they don't care. So all this imagination about, oh, what are you gonna say to your children if they see two men kissing each other?
Yeah.
Well, nothing unless they ask. But if I teach them that that's wrong, they are gonna ask.
Mhm.
And since you're religious, you're gonna have to tell them, well, the Bible says so.
Right.
And then you're gonna have to come up with a reasonable explanation about how and why does the Bible say that is wrong. What part of homosexual behavior is wrong? And spoiler, it's not. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, that was so weird to me. Like, if God is love and they're loving each other, like, why is it wrong? Isn't God love? It's just
That's an interesting
Oh,
position when it comes to Hinduism in respect to that, because while Bible, like Christianity and most of the Abrahamic religions specifically mention that homosexuality is bad, Hinduism doesn't exactly have that. But when you look at the Orthodox Hindu society, especially with the whole political Hinduism that's on the rise, the whole Hindu nationalist movement that is on the rise in India, homosexuality is hated. While I mean, when it comes to the Christian nationalism, they can at least point out to Bible, and although it's still a dumb logic, they can at least say, look, Bible says it's bad. But the Hindu nationalists can't do that, but still they're against homosexuality, and like their bigots are bigots, depend irrespective, and they behave pretty similarly irrespective of where they come from. But that's a
because
weird position.
because homosexuals are different from them. Oh, which is
Yeah,
really
yeah,
right.
that's the whole concept. But like here, there's not even textbooks that not textbooks, scriptures that you can point and look. Oh, look, the book says that it's bad, but it's still bad, and it's still dumb. But I feel it's dumber here because you don't even have anything to show for it. If, in fact, if you look at all the Hindu scriptures, not necessarily directly related to religion, but the whole the script, the writings and artworks that you can find from the ancient societies and all. There's a lot of depiction of homosexuality. So it's rather, if you're really about going back to purity, going back to ancient culture, it doesn't work out for you in that respect. And
Mm.
still somehow people are not questioning, which is very dumb. But coming back to this, uh, yeah, yeah, exactly. How can you be mad at love? And this is so dumb because accepting homosexuality, it's not telling that you are homosexual. It's like you don't have to love another person of the same sex, but someone else enjoying that is not hurting you anyway. Why is it bothering you? It's so dumb. And yeah, not like being a bigot has any logic in it, but yeah, there's that.
Yeah.
I,
Why do you care what they do in the room when there is consent?
mhm.
What's wrong with that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. It's teaching hate. It really is. I'm going to keep moving because I feel like we can talk about this topic alone for like many, many episodes. But
Yeah, that's true. But concerning to that, I have a different question, which is since all three of us live in religious societies, even if we might not be one, and since your kids also interact with other kids who are religious, and they might have a lot of questions that they get asked for, having different beliefs, and believe they might be also, coming to you to clarify those questions. Does that happen? And if that happens, how do you handle that?
By the way, small promotion. Nightbot states trans rights are human rights. If you don't agree, leave or be banned, which is kind of proper. Um, If you like
Yeah, sure.
what Skeptic Heaven is doing, please consider supporting the channel. There is a super chat button in the bottom of the chat box. You can also go to patreon.com slash Skeptic Haven in order to support the channel, the YouTube channel. Please like, please subscribe, please turn on that ring for notifications. Show your support, show your love for the program, people. Thank you. Sorry for the ad.
It's fine. It's fine.
do you mind quickly reviewing your question again?
Yeah, sure. So since I'll try to make it shorter this time because I feel I made it too big than it has to be. Basically, you have kids and they interact with other kids who are most probably majority of them are religious, and I'm sure they get questioned by them when people their friends notice that they have different views, which happens.
Yeah.
And since you are parents, I'm sure your kids come up to you to have those clarifications about the questions that they get asked. And how do you, as parents, handle that?
It's such a great question and great topic because someone else was saying, well, aren't the kids going to miss out on religion? And it's true. Like there is almost a negative part of not being religious in the sense that you could be bullied for not being religious. I've heard
Yeah,
from several parents that their kids, they started taking their kids to school, I mean, to church, so they wouldn't be bullied about not going to church anymore.
that does happen. Like, see, I have to just going back to my childhood. I personally somehow haven't been bullied. Actually, I understand how because I didn't, the whole tactics of bullies didn't never work on me because I really don't give a fuck about social norms even when I was a kid. But I have seen others being bullied because they were different, and I'm not being talking about being different as an atheist. Like I did not know any atheists when I was a kid. I got introduced to atheism and other atheists much later on in my life. But they were being bullied for being different, and being an atheist in a religious community is also practically being different. So yeah, that does happen. And basically, the whole concept of bullying is happens on two sides. One, if you're different, then people people have a fear of something that they do not understand. When you're different, then you have a scope of people not understanding you. So that's what that comes from. The other side of bullying is for the whole the whole try of being on top of the chain. So if you can make someone look smaller than you, then the outcome is you making yourself look bigger than them. and both of them are very toxic logics. But that's how the whole mentality of bullying comes from. And
Hmm.
yeah, being parents of atheist kids, I'm sure you have to handle that a lot.
Definitely. And I guess the only thing I could say is that I mean, I'm not giving advice, but I feel like to survive, you almost have to manage who you share that with. And even, with my husband being an outspoken atheist on social media, my kids have had friends who have seen my husband's social media and come over, and they have questions. And so it's been good in some respects because they have been open to the idea and have someone to talk to, but it could also be very isolating because like you said, you're very different and you're demonized by religion.
In my case, my children learned logic from a very young age, and well, now that they are teenagers, uh, I can find the other side of the coin because, well, they logically answer to everything. So
Nice.
imagine a teenager who's pretty much a sophist and a rhetorician, which his friends love because he can defend any position he wants. And well, nobody messes with him. Everybody likes him in that way because he can go to whichever position he wants. Now he doesn't care at all if his friends believe in something or other. And my younger child, my daughter, uh, she's different from Iker in a way that she kind of learned what we could call like dark humor, or really really
Ah,
really
okay. I
black
like dark humor,
humor, and
but I
she's
feel like
ironic.
I should have been friends with your kids back in school.
Yeah, but she can make some comments that could hurt people's feelings because she's so dark in her sarcasm and irony that nobody
Nice.
messes with her. Nobody
I
messes.
I
love it.
approve.
By the way, this is
So
a
cool.
wonderful comment by
Yeah, yeah.
Pragmatic Crystal. It says, "It happened to my son, and we started researching religion so we could combat the bullies. So we both learned together that religion, well, it's a farce. Yeah, that's a great comment, and that's one of the great things I taught my children from young age that uh, they cannot think that anything that I say is true because I said it's true. Yeah."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
And they've
important.
corrected me a few times over my life because they learned how to search on their own. They learned how to investigate from very young age, so they're really autonomous in that way. And I wanted to give them that autonomy. I was really on the type of on the boat that I'm not gonna ever say because I said so.
That's a good rule to have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally
And that leads perfectly to the next point. And I may go for it faster because I've got two slides of these and then another one. But it leads perfectly. Oh, going back to the previous slide, if you don't mind. Um, that leads perfectly that we're teaching our children to rely on the invisible and to distrust their reality, because ultimately you're believing in an invisible God, in an invisible hell, an invisible heaven, an invisible soul over the
What you live every day,
reality.
what you experience every
Exactly.
day. You don't see in everyday life that people like, okay, they said something like, God help me, and then some money falls out of the sky. Or, God, please remove my smallpox, and then the smallpox disappears. That doesn't happen.
Exactly. Or like
They,
agree.
someone
Yeah,
being demon possessed and speaking all these different languages all of
and
a sudden.
demon,
And
I exorcise you, and then, oh, everything is warm and rosy. No, no, no. They have
yeah,
to learn that reality is not real in order to keep their belief in the invisible. Yeah.
yeah. That's so harmful. Like I when I've talked to religious people and I'm starting to question them, they believe everything. So it's so hard to dismantle them because they don't question, like, okay, so you think the snake was talking? Yeah. And you think that yeah. Yeah, so it's like so easy to believe all these unbelievable things
When,
if you believe them.
whenever I find someone that acts like that, I tell them, okay, let's say I was up hiking on a mountain. I was on the second mile of the hiking, and then my gear failed, and I started falling 3 miles down the ground. And right before I fell, I heard a voice in my mind that said, "No, Rafa, you cannot die yet. You have a lot to think about and talk about." And then somehow I started floating and softly landed on the ground. Do you believe that?
They'll be like, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, some people don't.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. And if you really look into the people who are preaching you that, you'll find that when a priest, evangelist, whatever the position they hold, and considering they have money, that is an important point. If they can afford it, they won't go to church and die there when they fall ill severely. They will go to a scientific hospital. That should tell
yes.
you something. Don't don't just look at what they're telling you. Look at what they're doing with their life. That is a
Mhm.
bigger thing to follow. Follow the money, follow the actions. Don't just fall for the words,
Yeah,
because
just doing
if the
things the
words
right
are
way.
true, they will walk the talk. If they don't walk the talk, then don't believe the talk. It's as simple as that.
Here, I see a point over there that's the next about trusting prayer over medical intervention and a toxic response to death. And I think
Mhm.
those are kind of intertwined. Thing is, yeah, people like I don't know if they don't get their own cognitive dissonance because they pray and then they go to the doctor. While they are at the hospital, they're praying as well. Yeah, of course, sure. Don't stop going to the hospital. But if you're logically consistent, if you trust God, then God can cure you. Obviously, they have apologetics for that and answers that God gave us science and medicine in order to cure us instead of asking for what's it called, intercessory prayer. But still, there are people who have believed this to the core for and it has gotten, how can I say it, tragic
Yeah.
results.
To
Yeah,
the
there
point
are
of
people,
being harmful. Yeah.
and there are children who have died in the same household from the same problem at different times because, well, they didn't treat their young babies meningitis, and because they wanted to pray it away, and you cannot pray away meningitis. You have to treat
I've
it.
been, yeah, very true. I've been fortunate enough that I don't know any incident of that level of incident personally, but I have heard stories. I have read news. So yeah, that's a very that's like the lower end of the problem. It's not that common. People who can afford it usually not so dumb that they will completely let their kid die, but that does happen a lot as well. Like it's not zero, it's quite a significant number worldwide.
Yeah, there even let's say there aren't so many deaths, although there are a lot of deaths.
Yeah,
But even so, like with all health, all medical, we know that time is of the essence, right? The more time you're delaying
yeah,
intervention, the more the disease can progress, the more difficult it is to treat, the reduces the outcomes the longer you wait. And so if you're trusting in prayer and God to heal you, that is literally a threat to your health potentially. And so any delay can be harmful to the point of being harmful to death. And then going to the toxic response to death, I feel like for me this was a huge change, and it can be so harmful, like when somebody's in their most dire moment losing a loved one, like there's hardly anything worse than that in life, to be looking at it as a happy event. Oh, great, they're with God now, they're not suffering, they're heaven. Like that can be so harmful to somebody in that role. Like you're trying to be helpful, I understand it's with good heart and intention, especially if you believe this, but in reality it can be so harmful. Like somebody in that moment needs empathy, needs just somebody to hear them, right? And so that can be really harmful too.
And I think it robs us from the opportunity to understand that death is inevitable. That
Mm.
it is the
Yeah,
possibility that ends all other possibilities, and that we need to know that it's there. Like we have to, we just move along our life and think, well, death is not gonna happen to me. No, 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 it's there. It's gonna happen. Accept it. It's a part of life. Yeah.
That's such a good point. Or that it minimizes life here because you're just thinking about, but all these good things going to happen. I've heard people saying, like, and when they're in pain, God, go ahead and take me. And they literally will give up on life or give up on cancer treatments early or anything just because they think something better is coming. But if
And
you accept the reality of death, then you're going to do more to prevent that because that's an end.
I think that our fear of death can be seen in a different light, under a different light. Like, okay, it's not that I'm afraid of death. I'm afraid of all the things I'm gonna miss when I am not here anymore. Like, I, I wish I could keep living and experiencing more things. And well, where death is, I am not, and where I am, death is not. So let's not worry about the death so much, because once I'm dead, I'm not gonna exist anymore. I'm not gonna have feelings. It's not like I die and then I go to the nothingness or anything like that. I simply stop existing, like the flame of a candle. When you turn it off, it disappears. Yeah. So once we understand that, we have to get a grip on living. We only have one life. Yeah.
That
yeah,
changes how you parent tremendously.
yeah,
Everything.
yeah. That's a very valid point. Uh, I have put one addition and one follow up to that. The addition is, and people don't exactly die. Yeah, like the life, of course, ends after someone dies, but the person themselves, I don't believe exactly die at the moment. It's mostly about how we remember legends, how we remember important people in our lives. So a part of your life ends when you end. Of course, I'm not talking about heaven and other bullshit like that, but you also live with the people you have impacted, and as long as people remember you, you do live on in a way, not some kind of fictional heaven and dumb shit like that. But I feel that's a good thing to look forward to, instead of looking forward to being with God and shit like that.
Mhm.
But at the same time, parents also use religion as a cop out to answer difficult questions. For example, questions about death. Maybe it will be easier to
Mhm.
answer, let's say, your uh, child, adult children. Man, it sounds so wrong. But your kids, but when they're adult. But imagine answering that question when they're a toddler or a teen or at that phase, when you don't exactly expect them to understand the whole concept of death. So it becomes easy that okay, your grandma who is dead is now with God, and other cop out answers like that.
But there's always
Do you have
context,
any thoughts on that?
Sandia. There's always context. Toddlers make toddler questions. Yeah, and 5-year-olds make 5-year-old questions, and 10-year-olds make 10-year-old questions. And sometimes there is a fringe on those questions, but the question and the answer has to be like in that particular context. If you can't explain it so that your 5-year-old can understand it, probably you don't. Then probably you don't understand it as well. So think about it deeply, and you can actually say, "I don't know. Let's understand together. Let's try to figure it out together." Yeah, that's an answer as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I
and
would
probably
I
your
would take
children
that
will
answer if
accompany
I was
you
a toddler.
to search, and then like 2 minutes later, he's all over the place or somewhere else playing while you keep investigating. Right? But I think we can move up to this part of sexual purity. Man, that's annoying. And I saw that as, like as Sandra says, I saw that as bullshit. Even when I was religious, even when I was 11. I said, oh, okay, something in the math here is not working. Yeah, because I was taught as a man, if you have many partners, the greater the man you are. Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah, yes, you are
But
a stud.
if a girl has more than one partner, she's a whore. And the math just, I couldn't deal with it at the moment. I said that's bullshit.
Well, who
I,
are these
I
men
was rebel.
sleeping with then?
No.
Can't be these women.
Then I wasn't sleeping with anyone, but still, you see, at that time, you start getting the nuances of uh, liking someone, stuff like that, and then by culture, you understand how the people around you think, and the thoughts were like that. I'm talking about early '80s. So, thing is,
Mm.
even then I was religious. I had a lot of stupid thoughts in my head, but still, even then, the math didn't work out. Like that, and the fact that people that my family knew about, someone was killed in the place that we live, in the surroundings of we live in the neighborhood, just because he was homosexual. And that was
Mm.
really impactful for me. Like, wait, because he was homosexual, he was beaten to death?
Mm.
Really? That didn't make sense, and it still doesn't make sense. But I was still a bigot until a few years ago.
Yeah, and I think about all the other things that come along with sexual purity. I mean, that's also if you're not talking about sex or learning about it because it's bad, then you're not learning about diseases, self-care, hygiene, or like if you get an infection or you get an STD, like you don't want to say anything, you don't want to seek medical attention because they're going to know if you get pregnant. Like there's just so much things that come along with it. And even when you get married, like, and it can, sex is a huge part of marriage. Like, are you not going to know what you're doing or know what you like or know you're going to have sexual traumas because of this upbringing? Like, it's just such a big topic to just abstain and not talk about and say you're
Yeah,
not going to do that until
please
you're married
abstain.
and committed for life.
Please abstain from getting close to whatever you're attracted to while you have a hormone storm in your body. Yeah, good
Yeah,
luck.
and the only way it's right is if you get married. So then you've got all these 17-year-olds like eager to get married and be committed for life just so they can have sex.
Yeah, which is kind
And
of stupid.
also, I don't understand this whole dogma about not practicing safe sex and not controlling, not having birth control in the Abrahamic religions.
Oh,
That's so dumb.
well, it is, but many religious households think that sexual education should be done at home, and their thought and their way of teaching about sex their children is uh, never think about it,
Mhm.
abstain. That's it.
I I'm in the medical
Yeah.
world and I even know doctors who will not prescribe birth control to their patients because of their religious belief.
Wow, that
Isn't that a conflict of interest? I mean, that's very clearly a conflict of interest.
I
it looks
mean,
like it.
they
Yeah,
the patients can see another doctor, so they kind of see it as this is my
my religious
practice.
conscience. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Mhm.
Nice. Nice.
Oh well, that's that, and the thing is, abstinence. Yeah, I know it's effective against STDs and other stuff, but knowledge works better. Yeah, knowledge is power, and I don't know why, or well, I do know why, but most religious households are against uh, early sex ed, which
Mm.
is really harmful. And then they complain that we need abortion laws, we need free freedom to make the choice on your body. and they complain. Okay, then let us teach children at early age how to take care of themselves so they don't get pregnant without wanting to get pregnant. No, that's not either. We're not gonna do that. Okay, come on. Then what? Get your thoughts together, man.
Abstinence didn't even work for the Virgin Mary. That's so good.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a great question.
I've heard that joke before, but like I never get tired of it. It's so funny.
I still think there was a soldier called like they had the nickname Holy Spirit or something. I don't know.
I wanted to review. We kind of skipped over these. I wanted to mention it because to me this was a big one too. Is to wait until you're hearing from God to make decisions. That was a big thing for me. Is like empowering your children. No, you make the decision. What are the pros? What are the cons? Let's use reason. Not waiting for a sign or like, I don't know, let's see what God has to say. Let's pray, let's wait and just see what happens. It's just like you're letting life take control of you instead of you taking control of life and making your own choices.
A quick question on that. Like, how can you wait for God to tell you? I mean, if that actually worked, I don't think we would be atheists.
So, as a believer, because I grew up believing this way, I would literally wait until, like, let's say if I'm trying to decide on, for me, like, let's say a college major. Should I go into music or should I go into science? So I auditioned for the music department and I went for the biology degree, but I got accepted into the music program. Okay, well that's a sign from God.
Okay.
That's where he's leading me. That's it.
Okay.
So it's like you create the
Okay.
signs that you want to see
Wow.
essentially.
So you let go, and well, whatever the
Let go,
tides get
let
you to,
God.
yeah,
Yeah.
whatever the tides gets you to.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
well, okay.
This is a funny joke because the whole there's a proverb kind of thing that let Jesus take the wheel, which sounds very funny to me because cars were the thing when Jesus was alive. So like, what he's gonna do? You would clearly go into an accident. Like,
I know. You drive, God. Would you really do that? No.
Oh yeah, yeah, and that's an answer I give sometimes when people ask me, "Why do you do this, Rafael? You've been doing activism for 9 years. What's your point? What's your end point? Why? What does it bother you so much that I believe and you don't?" And I tell them, "Well, let me put it this way: if we're both driving on the highway and you give the wheel to Jesus, we're both fucked."
That's so good. I love that. That's a good
yeah,
one.
So
I I want to
don't give
see
the
the
wheel to
driving.
Jesus. That's
Yeah,
it.
yeah. I want to see his driving license. Where is Jesus' driving license?
Yeah. So,
Yeah. Um, moving on to the next one. Oh, this is so
Yes.
toxic. Teaching kids that they are bad, that they are born bad, and that they need a savior. It's so toxic, so gaslighty, right? I mean, how many children do we know that are so sweet and they just want to, please their parents, make their parents proud, that have so much wisdom. I mean, of course, kids are learning. There, that's what's behind. Like, that's what I'm going to lead with when I talk about good parenting is understanding the different ages and stages and learning developments of the child. But to teach them that they are inherently bad is just not true and harmful.
not only that, I go I take that to a step further. Like, not only is wrong to teach someone that he's born bad, he's born evil in a way. That's the most damaging. But in other
Mhm.
contexts, eh, it works. And if somebody, let's put it this way: 5-year-old is a bit trained in his psychomotor abilities, and then, well, they can drop stuff that they carry. Yeah, maybe. Oh, be careful! Do not cut yourself. Are you okay? Support the child. Tell him how to do it the next time. But if you tell them that they are stupid, then you've messed up as a parent. because it was not part of the problem that it was a bit I don't know, distraction or something that got on the way and made him, I don't know, lose balance, drop the glass or something. No, you are telling that there is something wrong within them, about them. Yeah. So think about what you're gonna tell your child whenever he or she has a particular accident. Think twice before you're telling them that they are clumsy, or that they are stupid, or that they can't handle stuff. Like, oh no, she can't handle math or maths. Yeah, you
Hmm.
program him or her to not be able to do it.
So true. I would say it's even worse for women too, because it's like you tempted Eve. Like it's not.
Oh, you
It's
taunted
not
Adam.
even.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not only are you
It's your
inherently
fault.
bad, but you're in
You
charge
women
of.
get us on the fall. It's
Yeah,
your
you're.
fault.
It's your fault that these other people around you are doing these bad things too, because you're tempting them just by being
Just by
around.
existing.
Yeah.
Yeah, why are you so beautiful? Right? And why are men so animals? Yeah, sure. No, that's not okay.
And then this, I feel like I wasn't as affected as much by this, but I've heard of so many adults now that were terrified by this idea of going to hell. Like they literally couldn't sleep at night, having nightmares. Like to do that to a kid is so scary, terrifying. And it's down to their thoughts. Like if you're telling a kid God knows your thoughts, he knows your heart, then you're afraid to even have a bad thought. You're afraid to dare to doubt, to question, because that alone is enough. It's equal in religion. It's equal to actually doing the act, is the thought of doing the act, right? And so that's such a harmful teaching. You're going to burn for eternity unless you believe this.
Yeah, and I think that that should be understood as child abuse. A 6-year-old doesn't need to know about hell. Really, there
Hmm.
is no way a 6-year-old need to know about hell. There is no way a 6-year-old need to be told that he's bad by nature. That's just the
Manipulative.
idiotic.
Yeah. And this is also somewhere where the math doesn't add up. Like you think that a 6-year-old cannot understand death, but they can understand hell somehow. They can
Mm.
understand heaven. So, like, where is the maths there?
That's a good point. I think death is kind of like homosexuality too, that we think the kids can't handle it, but they're like they can understand it.
Yeah, and it's completely okay if they do not understand when they're 6. They just need to be open to understanding it. That's all.
Right.
Like,
Age
yeah,
appropriate
yeah, exactly. You don't
information.
have to, have a, you don't have to pass bachelor's degree when you're a 6-year old. That comes up later. You just need to know that that's up on the line. That's all.
Mhm. Alma, do you mind putting the next slide there?
Oh,
Yes.
I was telling her to the comment by Kentucky Atheist, right? When I was 5, I asked how they got all the animals on the boat. Well, you can burn in hell if you want to ask questions.
Oh my gosh.
5-year-old, oh come on! You see,
A
I don't know.
burn in hell just because you
Yeah,
have a question as a 5-year-old. That's
yeah.
Yeah. And plus,
crazy.
isn't burning in hell for eternity much worse than death? How is that not an answer and this is an answer?
I'm gonna answer how my daughter would answer. She would say, "That's stupid," with 2 O's.
And a why stupid.
Yeah.
um and so okay, so keeping it moving, I feel like we haven't even touched on the physical abuse, right? Because if I'm the authority and what I say goes, and in the
I
Bible it
touched a
even
bit about that.
says, strike with the rod and those kind of things, like there's support here for physical abuse of your children.
Yeah.
And we know that's harmful.
Yeah, don't spare the rod and spoil the child. There's a verse about that. which is
Hmm.
really, really, really harmful. Still, in several countries, as far as I know, several countries in Africa, there's still the rod in the classroom by nuns.
Oh.
It's not
Uh,
even
mhm.
part of the whole Hinduism concept, but it's pretty common in Indian culture, to be honest. Getting beaten by parents is a pretty common thing. But that is not a result of religiosity, to be honest. It's more of an accepting way of parenting, like, letting your kids know that this is wrong by physically hurting them. So, yeah, it's a,
Yeah,
it's a difference in culture. It's not
because
exactly religious.
belts, rods, and fists give such clear messages.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Like,
that's
if,
clear information about what
yeah,
was
yeah,
wrong.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's so true.
And I
Like I have been beaten by my parents quite a bit, but it's not in a toxic way. It's just that it's a it's a
it's a
cultural difference. Like
yeah, it's
I
a
don't agree with
legitimate.
it, but I understand that yeah, it's where they're coming, but it's not like it's just a cultural difference. Like I don't agree with it, but yeah, there's that.
In the Quran, it states that you can hit your wife.
Yeah, I think Bible also says that.
Yeah. As
Yeah,
long as
in
it's
fact,
not
in
a
fact, some
Muslim
of the
or
a
jihad,
lot of Hindu
you can
scriptures
hit
also
her.
says that it's not that uncommon. But the concept of beating kids is not directly, directed by religion. It's more of a culturally accepted way of doing things.
Mhm.
Unlike the wife beating thing, which is both part of Bible, Quran, and some Hindu scripture as well. I cannot remember the exact sloka. The verse is called sloka in Sanskrit. It's a similar thing, just different language. I can't remember the exact sloka, but it's there as well.
And the
Oh yeah,
crazy
yeah, yeah. We have been. C
That
is not an acceptable grade in Asian cultures.
I
Like it's
I
either
want
A
to
or you
thank
failed.
my parents. I really want to make. I want to thank my parents because they didn't. Okay, they sometimes abused me physically, but the one time I got a wrong. Uh, I didn't. The one time I got a C, I actually got a D in a math test. My mom sat with me for the rest of the day, the same day, and told me, "Well, you actually know this," and worked with me. And I took the test again the
Ah,
next day,
nice.
and I never again failed in maths ever.
That's right.
Yeah, so it
Mm.
was different. She didn't hit me. She didn't. She just. I came home crying, and
That's
Mm.
pretty wholesome.
she hugged me and she said, "I don't know what happened to you, but you know this. I really can't understand what happened to you, but this particular test, everything here you already know.
Mhm.
Help me figure out what happened." But she didn't hit me. She didn't raise her voice. She just sat with me and stood there for 6 hours, letting me know that I already knew what came in the test, and I never
Mhm.
failed again in maths.
That
I
is sweet.
I want to thank my mom for that. Thank you, mom.
That's very sweet. I mean, I have a strange place with my parents on that. A bit of it comes from the Indian culture, to be honest. It's not just my parents per se. Education is valued a lot, not in the right way. It's more about getting marks and being good at academics so that you can use it to further your career. But whatever the underlying problems might be, the core concept is that academics and marks are valued a lot. And I was kind of a good student. Like I kind of scored well, so that also played out being my parents getting disappointed a much higher level compared to, let's say, kids who wouldn't score that well. So it's a strange position. And yeah, disappointment was pretty common especially when it comes to school. Although I scored kind of okayish as someone who wasn't serious about studies, but I wasn't exactly serious about studies, and that's what bothered my parents. So yeah, it's a cultural difference. I mean, what can I
Mhm.
say? But that's pretty sweet. I mean, like, kudos to your mother for that. I have loving parents. Like, I won't say my parents are bad, but that did not happen.
Oh no. Well, my parents did. There was physical abuse. There was beating and stuff like that. But that particular time, I have it engraved in my memory because it was like even as was the worst day of my life when I got a really really bad qualification in maths, for which I was really good. Uh, that time that my mother spent with me, like letting me know that I already knew the answer to those questions, that was wonderful. And well, I still remember it. It's been like I don't know, 40 something years about since then. Okay. And I
Yeah,
wanted to
I
touch
feel young now.
on the third point of the on the third bullet point, about the physical abuse and the spur the rod and spoil the child, because you see there are several studies that have been made between children with non physical abuse education and physical abuse education, and the tendency of children who are physically abused to lie.
Oh.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah,
I can confirm to that because it's pretty common in Indian culture because see, uh, I am someone who doesn't lie that often. Like I usually don't care enough to consider lying. But when it comes to parents, I would rather lie than face the consequences. Whenever I did something wrong in as a kid, my first concern wasn't that I did wrong and I would have to face consequences of that. My first concern was, oh shit, my parents are going to scold me for that. I'm not an exception to that. It's a common thing when it comes to Asian cultures where parents are quite strict. So yeah, it's a dilemma. You might think that you're being strict and so you're teaching your kids to be right, but what you're teaching them is to be afraid of you, and the
yeah,
result of that is kids will try to avoid getting caught, not
yeah,
correcting themselves.
exactly, exactly, Sandra. That's where I was gonna go there. You learn like in an indirect way, instead of learning that what you were doing was wrong, you learn ways how to not get caught.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm. And it's such a contradiction. I always, even when I was a believer, thought this was so strange that we're like, confession, no judgment, forgiveness, tell us, lay your burden, tell us your struggles. But then if you do, it's like there's big consequences. They label you. Like there's people that get kicked out of church because they got a divorce. And it's like, no, we're gonna choose sides. Where this person can still go to the church, this person can't. It's like, well, you're judging people and you're ostracizing people because of their sin, but then you're here saying, hey, we all sin, we all need a savior. Like, come join the sinners. We all are seeking Jesus together. And it was just like, no, you want them to fall in line, and if they don't, they're out, and that's it.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that there are many parts of parenting that are correlated with religious parenting that ends up being harmful towards the children, and it's also harmful for the fathers, for the parents. Yeah,
I
because
want
it
to,
strains your relationship with your kids.
so
Really
true.
harmful. Yeah. So it's harmful in every way.
You
Yeah.
know, Rafa, you bring up an amazing point because I just like 2 weeks ago had this huge epiphany where I completely changed how I parent my children. And I literally had this coming out moment where I said, I believed these things, but now I've let them go. And here's how I'm going to parent you going forward. So it's like a big moment in our household. And it was still stemming this whole religious mindset that I didn't realize I still had. And this idea of I'm the authority, I know better, listen to me. And in the end, I had to come down to I had to decide, do I want to try to teach my kid my way, my best thing, and like really be strict about it and kind of almost forceful and have them hate me and stray away and hide things from me? Or do I want to foster a relationship where I am able to reach her and influence her, but as almost equals in a way where I'm not hitting her, I'm listening to her point of view, I'm considering her ideas. It was a big shift. And but at the end, what I was going to say is I made that decision because I decided what was most important is that I have a long lasting relationship with my mom. We know so many adults that don't talk to their parents. Their parents don't know the real them. And I didn't want that. I wanted to go on vacation with my daughter when she's an adult and her kids and have weekends together. And so it's just it can really harbor this secrecy relationship, hide things relationship if you're like that.
Yeah.
I,
That's a worthy call. I mean, as I said, like I have a lot of disagreements with them parents, but there's not a strain on the relation. Like I do visit them thrice a year approximately, and they know that I have disagreements, but they're we are together. So
Mhm.
yeah. So I think that's more important that whether you agree or not. And, disagreements happen. Like even with like-minded people, you might not agree with anything and everything, and that's fine. But discussing the disagreement is more important than suppressing it and letting it become something big that ultimately breaks the relation. Uh, I feel that's a sad outcome of in relation, be it friendship, be it a relation, be with with your parents, and this is a wrong way to handle it. Like I'm not even like I'm even an introvert. I can live without people, but I don't want to ruin relations on disagreements. It's good to have disagreements, but discussions are more valuable on disagreements than just say that okay, you don't agree with me, we can be together. That's just a dumb way to live life.
yeah, we can understand each other as long as we are communicating with each other and we talk about the same thing at the same time and in the same way. So um, maybe you can believe in I don't know, Allah or Krishna or whatever. Maybe you're a Shintoist. Sure, let's let's keep going. We're all humans, and the there's let me put it this way: epistemological landscape. Well, I had the opportunity to get to these conclusions towards throughout my life and my studies, etc. And many people out there, well, they have their own epistemological landscape, and they may be like justified in believing their I don't know their God's beliefs, etc. The problem is having those influence your critical thinking abilities in order to raise your children. Yeah, because if you're blinded by the book, then
Mm.
you are literally blinded by the book and going by what the book states instead of thinking on your own and learning how to be I don't know, a moral agent, a thought agent. And that's the thing, we're usually taught to be followers, like
Mm.
this is the way, this is the instructions. And yeah, in many ways, if I'm gonna make a cake, if I am gonna bake a cake, well, I can follow the recipe, and if I go step by step, I should get the same result. But life is not that simple. It's not a kitchen recipe,
Yeah,
and several circumstances require more thoughtful process.
yeah.
Yeah,
And even if you go with the cake and recipe thing, I'll say that let's say you're baking your first cake. It's practical that okay, you have a recipe, you bake it, you have a desirable outcome, you want to have a guide to tell you what to do because you're doing it for the first time. But if you limit yourself to the recipe, if you think that that's the only way to bake a cake, you'll just pick one kind of cake, but that should not be the end goal. You
and that's
A
yeah,
better
I
goal would
agree.
be yeah, you take a recipe, you understand it, then you remix and make it your own. You do what you can do from it. Like it should be a starting ground. It should not be something that you get completely confined into. And I'll say that's the difference between being religious and not being religious. Being religious, both in terms of parenting and as a child, is like following a set rule and not diverging from that, irrespective of whether how outdated, how wrong the rules might be. Because legality and morality is not the same. Uh, Sometimes they are, ideally they should be, but they're not. So that's an important distinction to have. Like having a guide and expanding from it is very important. That's how we progress. Otherwise, we would still be writing with pen and paper. We would not have the internet we are on. if someone thought that okay, that is blasphemy, we cannot experiment with something beyond that. And that's how we progress. And I'll say that's the core difference. That's why religion is still 2000 years old and still stuck there, while we have aeroplanes, we're flying, we are on space, we are on the verge of curing cancer and whatnot. And there we are deciding whether we can, like, on the other hand, people are deciding whether someone can masturbate or not. Like,
Well, let's keep going.
And I was just going to make a point too that I feel like sometimes they think that they're validated by the outcomes. Like, for example,
yeah,
let's say religious people can claim, well, we've got lower incidence of drug abuse with religious people, or like, let's say, higher percentage of successful marriages. Successful, like they're still married.
yeah.
But it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy that if somebody is being ashamed, or they don't believe as their family, and they're being ostracized or demonized, and now they're seeking something to make them feel better, like drugs, or engaging in risky behavior because now they're trying to rebel from what they were taught. And then in their mind, in a religious person's mind, they're validated. Like, see, you didn't believe, and now all these bad things are happening to you, or you're doing these bad things. And it's like it reinforces their belief, but really a lot of times they're causing those actions without even realizing that, well,
we
if
we
you
have a joke
hadn't been that way. Go ahead.
in Mexico. We have a joke that states that we don't call them drug addicts, we just call them pre-evangelicals.
Or post.
Yeah.
Post for trauma. Yeah.
So
And doesn't the church like prey on that too? Like, you've got problems, come on over, we've got the solution. And a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah,
times it's like, no, that's what led to them being that way
yeah,
because
yeah,
they
yeah.
grew up that way.
Very, very true. And I've seen this argument from religious and religion apologists that, oh, look, we did not have these mental problems before society modernized and stripped it away from religion. Well, you did. You just didn't have a name for that.
Or it was
Everything was
hidden.
there. It was just not categorized. It just did not have a cure. It just existed. You
yeah.
know,
Or hidden.
yeah, or hidden. Yeah, exactly. Like, uh,
And they prefer
PTSD.
to be hidden.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah?
It's
They,
all about
I've
pretending it
met
does not exist.
I've
Just
met
like,
many religious people that think that not knowing something somehow makes it not true. Like people
Mhm,
not wanting to know that they have cancer. Like,
oh yeah,
mhm.
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's like,
pretty religious thinking.
yeah, 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 very true. Just like pretending there is a God somehow makes it easier. Similarly, pretending that mental problems does not exist somehow makes it easier. Dude, pretense does not make it true. Pretense does not make it non-existent. That's not how things work. And when it comes to mental health problems, before it was called PTSD, it was called shell shock. The thing existed. It had a different name.
Of
Oh,
course.
yeah.
And I would really like to move on because I think we're betting on a dead horse.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's good.
Uh,
And I think a
That's
lot of
not.
the other points we covered.
Go ahead.
No, a lot of the other points we already covered in the previous one, or we kind of talked about it. Some other ones that we hadn't talked about yet are teaching that disabilities and diseases are caused by sin, or that negative things that happen to people are because they sinned, or maybe their parents sinned. And it's just this whole idea of being completely incompassionate, this stigma which prohibits people from getting the help that they need.
Or the reverse from that. Like everything good that happened is thanks to God.
Yes.
Like
Yes. So if
you
good
you
things are
made something
happening.
great. Your cake was wonderful, and thank God. And I'm
Or
like,
that.
and you may be like, well, I burned my eyelashes doing this stupid cake. God didn't come here and bake it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right. And that helps you. I mean, that I can drive people looking up to the wrong people. Like, this person's successful. That's because God is blessing them. What are they doing? Let me just listen to whatever they're saying because God is favoring them somehow. So they have gained credibility as a result of their success.
Oh, and there is a particular apologetic that I find really, really toxic, that states that believers are more successful than non-believers.
Hmm.
That people who believe have better lives and have more success in life than those that who don't believe. And I invite those people to go visit the poorest countries in the world, where the belief rates are like over 99%, and see
Mhm.
for themselves the success they're talking about.
That's so good. I one time had an atheist say, well, if God exists, then he's only favoring the first world countries and not the third world countries.
Well, yeah,
And,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
He's
yeah.
got a
And,
bias.
yeah, yeah.
He's got a bias
Usually,
for first world countries,
yeah,
although
yeah,
they
totally,
believe
totally.
less.
So God is like alien in Hollywood movies. They're only focused on America.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And,
I love Darnov's comment. I was the only person in town that didn't die in the tornado. Thank you, God. Yeah, yeah. Fuck everybody else
Exactly.
that died. Thank you for saving me.
Yes.
And it's like the guy that said, "Oh, it's the Holy Spirit told me not to get in that plane, and the plane crashed." Oh yeah, did you thank the Holy Spirit for killing the rest of the passengers? You didn't, right? Why didn't the Holy Spirit told them to? I don't know. Maybe,
Yeah.
but whatever.
And if it was a baby, it wasn't that the baby did something bad. Their parents did something bad. It must have
yes,
Oh,
come from
yes,
the
yes, yes, yes,
generations.
yes,
mhm.
yes.
But if it
That's
happened,
another tenet of religious parenting, moral transference, moral
oh
responsibility
yeah.
transference. That's one of the worst ideas in Christianity. Like, really, there is no such thing as moral responsibility transference, and the freaking crucifixion is moral responsibility transference. How
Hmm.
can that be justice? Yeah,
Right.
spoiler, it's not.
And if you do something bad, oh, God will forgive me. He's already forgiven me for that. He's so good. He's judging everybody else, and that's why the bad things are happening to them. But for me, he's forgiving me.
Yes. And
Oh, go ahead. It was,
actually, I mean, a little side note: college humor. If you don't know, college humor is a comedy channel. Like, they're good. They had a good skit on that, but it was about how when athletes perform good, and religious athletes kind of go like, "Oh, God help me make that goal, make that shot, etc." So the skit goes like a team performed bad, and they were giving a press interview, and someone asked like what happened, and it's like, oh, God wanted me to be bad. And it's like playing on that as, and it's very funny. I mean, like, I'm not as funny as college humor, so I know it doesn't sound as funny as when I dictate it, but just look it up. It's a good funny video or skit on that. Yeah,
yeah. There was one more point I wanted to share on the next slides before we talk about new ways to parent. And if you don't mind putting it up there. Oh, this whole idea of being a servant of the church. I've met so many kids that were like, oh, I really wanted to play basketball, for example. But, my pastor was saying that it's taking away from God, it's taking away from church, it's of the world. So I mean, I gave up basketball and now
You're
I'm
so selfish for wanting to practice a sport.
right. And so
Yeah.
I just think that's so harmful for children. This is the crucial time for them to realize what they want, what they're good at, what they want to do in the future. And so to say, all that's of the world, don't do that. Serve God. That's what's most important. That's what's most pleasing to Him. That's truly can change somebody's path, their trajectory in life from that toxic
Yeah, that's
teaching.
manipulation rhetoric. Yeah, that's right.
And last point. I mean, I feel like religion is so good at teaching about othering. Like, we have the truth, but those other people, here's what's wrong with what they believe, and
Yeah,
here's what's wrong with what they're
we are
doing.
God's chosen people. They
Yes.
are not.
If I had, I don't know, 10 cents every time that an apologist comes up to my channel and starts speaking with me, and starts with "you guys," like like I'm part of some tribe or something, but you guys think that everything came out of nothing and stupid things like that.
Uh-huh.
Let's stop being tribal and start being human. And if you're gonna search for the truth, then let's do that together. But don't start in a tribalistic way. Like it's just that you guys think that everything came out of nothing. I cannot believe that. That's stupid. Well, yeah, nobody's saying that.
It's an ad hominem attack, right? Like someone doesn't believe and you're sharing valid reasons of why you shouldn't believe. Well, that person doesn't believe. So they're already lost or whatever. So we shouldn't listen to what they have to say.
They're not on the inside.
Hmm. They don't know.
They don't know.
They did not get the invite.
Yeah, for them. Yeah, yeah, they didn't get the memo.
Yeah.
So we've talked about some of the harms that come out of religious parenting, which I think is so important because we were always told about all the good. So now we're going to talk about, and we kind of have talked a little bit about it, but new ways, like what's the right way to go about things. But first of all, I want to say um, that, I mean, just because you don't believe in God doesn't mean that means that you are going to parent like this, right? Like everybody's going to be different parents. There's so many different philosophies. There's so many different children that have different needs. And so this is not meant to be like, here's the right way to parent or like, here's how atheists parent. But if you wouldn't mind putting the next slide, I think these are just good science based or reason based um,
I'll put it in a
ideas.
different light, and I would say that this is not the way to parent. This is a way to parent, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's a thoughtful thought experiment on how if you think thoroughly and follow what psychology, pedagogy, and other scientific disciplines tell us about human behavior and children behavior. If you follow through with these bullet points, well, you're following some of the findings up to date. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's not intended to be taken as a point by point instruction book. You need to think things of your own because every single person and every single household is different. Just learn how to think for your own, for yourself.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think this is a wonderful bullet point list. And your mic.
Yeah, yeah. And following, for going back to the cake analogy that we have used before, this is how a lot of people have cooked good cakes, but you can also bake good cakes in your way.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. So first point I put and I made this list, so it's not exhaustive. Please add to it. People in the chat, please add. But yeah, first point is sexual education. Like people say, well, if you're not gonna teach abstinence and all of that, then people are gonna go crazy and get diseases and get pregnant and all these things. Well, no, it doesn't have to be that way. Why not parent by teaching them? Here are the risks. Here are the ways to prevent. Here's how to be smart about choosing your partner. Maybe like for my girls, I taught them ask for an STD test before you have sex with a person. Like that's something important. Their medical background or diseases. Certain situations to avoid, like, hey, don't go off alone with this person. Don't put yourself in these tricky situations. Or if you are in this situation, here's what to keep in mind, how to handle it. As I mentioned, hygiene, health, and I think that really contributes to overall a positive body image when you look at it as normal and powerful and beautiful and you have control and not something shameful and dirty and like that. I mean, it really changes how you look at yourself and how you like I mentioned before, like self-awareness, learning what you like, what you're boundaries are, what you are going to tolerate or not. Like all of that is part of your identity, and it's so important.
Completely agree. I think that sex ed from early age, I don't know, talking about things by their names. And I never used PP as penis. I told my children how it was it called. It's called penis. It's called vagina. Yeah. Because being assertive prevents um, your children from being abused. It's part of the problem is when you use the wrong words, children learn to communicate with the wrong words,
Hmm.
and they have problems into passing on ideas. No, you have to tell things as they are, and tell them obviously in the context. A 5-year-old in a toddler, it's a toddler. A 5-year-old is 5-year-old. 10-year-old, 10-year-old, and my children are now 15 and 14. And 14. So now they both know about STDs. They know about uh, uh,
Condoms, safe sex,
yeah,
maybe.
yeah, safety and prevention. They know about pregnancy. They know about having boyfriend, girlfriend, etc. And they have chosen not to have a girlfriend. My boy and my girl has zero interest in men right now. So well, that's their prerogative. So but they know, they are informed. And what I've been telling them is, okay, well, uh, learn to make your own choices. That's been my whole motto or my whole life. And learn from this. You have choices, you have knowledge, and now you can make your own. You can make up your own decisions. Yeah,
Uh,
and I will support you.
Sandra, I'm curious to hear because I guess I what I know is, we have the Karma Sutra book, but then at the same time, I've seen a documentary about women in India, girls not knowing how to, or not having the tools to care for their period. So like missing school when they were on their period, and things like that. And they weren't being told like, here, use these, and here, this is how you use it, and things like that. So I'm just curious, what does the Hindu culture teach about sex education?
This is similar to the dilemma I mentioned you about the homosexuality thing. So Hinduism itself explicitly doesn't, talk about not having sex or not having sex or being a virgin and dumb shit like that. But there are sects of it, and when it comes to religious nationalism, it's not that different irrespective of whatever religion you're talking about. It's very similar. Christian
Mhm.
nationalism is very similar to Hindu nationalism, and so while Hinduism itself doesn't have very clear distinct instructions on it, nationalist Hindu society does. So it's very similar to how, uh, pretending not how, pretending that not knowing something is equivalent to it not existing, something that Raphael mentioned earlier. It's also applicable to here, that pretending that teenage sex does not happen uh, somehow makes them non-existent. No, that happens. Like maybe you did not have it, maybe I did not have it, I personally did not have it for whatever reason. Does not make other people did not have it. But if you accept that it happens, which is true based on statistics, and if you found out ways to make it better, it's not the same as that letting talking about people having sex education with young children is not the same as provocating towards having, telling them, okay, if you have sex, have it in a safe way is not the same as telling them to have sex. That's something
Mhm.
people miss out. So Hinduism is not an exception to that. uh, Hindu society is definitely not an exception to that. It's pretty dumb. It's as dumb as a Christian Orthodox society. But yeah, Kama Sutra is a weird place in that because it's not exactly a Hindu scripture. It came out of India, definitely. Like there's no denying of that. I think it's from the era of 1000, somewhere between 1000 and 1500 AD. I might be wrong because I don't have a great memory, unfortunately. But I think that is the era it came out of. But it's not exactly a Hindu scripture. Uh, it's an Indian scripture, but it's not. That's. I mean, it's not a scripture. It's a Indian literature, but there's a bit of difference in that.
Gotcha.
So yeah, the society is regressive, although there are literature from the same society that is very progressive. So it's a strange place to that.
Hmm. And the second point that I think is important when talking about, a way to parent is promoting autonomy, right? This is a crucial formation age, where they're learning to use their voice, they're learning about their own boundaries, what they'll tolerate, what they want out of life, like letting them make some of those decisions for themselves and using their voice to speak up for their needs and wants. It's really important to foster that kind of environment. And I love Alma's comment there that she said, I think if you can't accept your children as they are, you shouldn't be a parent. So just the idea of accepting who they are at their core is such a big part of being a good parent.
Yeah, I totally understand. I think as a parent, you have two goals. Firstly, yeah, like you are bringing the life forms into the planet that is part of it, definitely. Without you being a parent, that wouldn't happen. But the second part is, guiding them to guiding your children to have a good life, helping them on the path, not telling them who they should be. I think that's a very clear distinction. A good parent guides their children. A bad parent tells them who they think they should be. I'll say that's a
Mm,
good oversimplification, but I'll say that's a distinction that I would say I would consider.
yeah.
I wanted to touch upon a point that usually, well, I learned with my own children, on my own. Maybe it's related to what you were talking about. I'm sorry, I had to remove myself from the video for a few minutes. I don't know if it's related, but what my children taught me when they were younger is that even as they know a few words or they know how to like speak, that doesn't mean that they understand every single word that you use. And it doesn't mean that they understand every word that they are using as well. They may have learned it in a particular context and they don't know the nuances. Uh, just don't think that they can understand everything you say just because they can talk, especially at very young ages. You can tell them many things, but they will understand, I don't know, 10%. You have to pay attention to their um, body language and explain thoroughly and punctually. Right? I don't know if it was related to what you were saying. I'm sorry. It
No, no,
comes.
it is, it
Yeah.
is. And other thing is, you have to understand that just because they're your children, it doesn't mean that they are the same person as you. Like people are different. Even your
Mhm.
children can be different from you. I'm very different from my parents, and that does confuse them once in a while. But that's just how life is. I mean, like, yeah, I might have something my parents reacted with might be very different how I react with it. But that's because we are just different people. Nothing. It's not because I disagree with them. It's just that how humans work. We're not the same. And following the comment from Jesus tells, yeah, as a parent, you do learn a lot from your children. Like I am not a parent, and probably I would be, but I like to teach people. So this is also similar to how teachers tell that you learn a lot from your students. It's a similar thing as you guide someone younger than you, someone new to whatever field you are into. You just don't guide them, you also get a lot of insight through them because they are going through some circumstances that you haven't been through. So you're learning through their perspective as well. So, yeah, like don't try to confine your children into who you are. Let them be who they are, and you can learn a new thing through them as well.
Yeah, I think there's always caveats, of course, extremes. Like some people lack reasoning, maybe have some extreme mental conditions. Like there's some caveats to just letting them do whatever they want and, letting them decide. But for the very, very most part, I think this is a good guiding force or guiding principle.
Yep.
So the next thing is taking action. Like I mentioned before, instead of waiting for God to open the right door, no, like it's great to empower your children. Like, okay, what steps do you need to take to make that goal? Or um, if you want that, then you need to go after that. You've got to do the work to make that happen. That's such a good life lesson.
Now that in many ways manifestation is coming all over the place instead of praying. Okay, learn this. If you want something to manifest, you go make it happen. Work for it. Thinking about it and wishing for it and positive thinking is not going to make the work. Only making the work is going to make the work. So go act and do things on your own. Not only think, not only pray, not only manifest, just plan, go ahead and make the work, or it won't happen.
Mm-hmm. Ain't that the truth?
Unless you can inherit it, that's an exception. But most of us are not that lucky.
True. The next thing is, I think good. It's a good skill to empathize with your children and listen to what they're saying and to respect their individuality. But then I think also you teaching them and emulating that hopefully will teach them to be like that and to respect others, to empathize with what the human is going through and not just othering and demonizing and that kind of mentality.
I think that being human teaches us a lot in that way. The mirror neurons that we have let us understand how other people may feel in particular situations, and I think that not having empathy for others, well, may be a hindrance in its own. So yeah, understand how others feel, be considerate, be respectful as a default, and then you can change your stand according to situations and circumstances. But as a default, be empathic, respectful, and sometimes even try to be charitable. Make the best of whatever people is telling you instead of the worst.
Mm-hmm. That's so good. Like you give people the benefit of the doubt instead of jumping to wrong conclusions.
Yeah, or
That makes
jumping
a
to
lot of sense.
conclusions. They may be right, but try not to jump to them as a first step. Like, okay, you may be right in your conclusion, etc., but do not jump to that as a first step. A first step: be more charitable, be open to understanding and empathizing, because, well, there is no two equal experience in the world. There's no
Yeah,
such thing.
completely.
No, nobody can be
Mhm.
in anybody else's shoes. So we can all learn from each other, because precisely nobody has ever been in somebody else's shoes ever.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And if I were to expand on that, the thing is maybe you are right. Like you might end up being right, but considering the possibility that you might be wrong and looking into that whether you are right or wrong can is a huge potential for growth. If you start with the mentality that you are definitely right, no one, everyone else is wrong, you will always be stuck in wherever position you are. But you consider a possibility that you might be wrong and you should look into that and question that whether you're right and wrong. Even if you are right, that's great, you are right, so you are proven right, cool. But if you are proven wrong and you accept that, and you then you get the possibility of learning something new, that's growth. And you should always focus on growth, not proving you're right irrespective of whether you're right and wrong. It's good to be right, that's great, but that should not be the goal. The goal should be growth. The goal should be learning something.
Yeah, and it's funny because what it feels to be wrong before knowing that one is wrong feels exactly the same way as being right.
Yeah, 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 yeah. True, true, true. Very true, very true. Yeah, nice way
So
to put it.
I put an example in one of my conversations, or in many of them, and I state, let's say I have a Honda Civic. I do, no, a Honda CRV, and I say, okay, a Honda CRV is faster than a Ferrari. And Sandrid looks at me, and after he brings up his jaw back from the ground, he tells me, no, Ferraris are faster than Honda CRVs, by whatever measure possible. And we go and make tests. And we go 50,000 laps in a test driving course. Okay. And after the 50,000 laps, every single lap is won by the Ferrari. The Ferrari is faster than the Honda CRV. Okay. After those tests, would I be reasonable to keep thinking that the Honda CRV is faster? Well, obviously no. But if I'm certain, if I am completely and absolutely certain that the Honda CRV is faster, I'm gonna try to rationalize some way to get out of the situation and say, no, 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 that's an illusion. The CRV is faster, and and that's not rational. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh, it's like what's that about the heels? Like digging in your heels, and I can rationalize some way, and I'm gonna hold on to the belief that the Honda CRV is faster than Ferrari because, well, that's my sincerely held belief, and you cannot fight against that. Come on, let's be reasonable.
Yeah, yeah. This is the whole, core principle of the scientific method, which is if you believe something, then you need to test it out and check if you are right. That's the whole, simplification of the scientific method. And look at what it has done. It's really that simple. That okay, you might be right, but test it out. Give an opportunity to test yourself. Give an opportunity to prove yourself wrong, and you might be. That's how one scientific theory gets replaced by a better one, because they actually tested it and proven it that okay, this one is better, not because it was dictated by God that this is better. It's it's that's a very simple thing, but that's how humanity progresses.
Such
That's
a
how
good
we are
point.
using. Yeah, that's why you're using LED instead of fluorescent bulbs.
And I feel like that's how we are also now being able to discredit a lot of what the Bible teachings are is through science repeating, doing studies. And one of those studies was about violent discipline. I think that that's been violent discipline has been an accepted parenting technique for many generations. And I feel like only now are
Centuries.
studies, yeah, and I even had to tell my daughter that because I used to spank her when she was a kid, and I had to tell her because she feels like she was abused, and I'm like, but that was a valid parenting technique when I was growing up, and it's only now that we're learning that there are traumatic impacts to the brain when you do have physical discipline, and so we were just learning there are better ways, there are different ways, and ways that are specific to certain age groups because we know the brain isn't fully developed for little kids, so we shouldn't have expectations that they're going to behave non-impulsively or not throw temper tantrums or have a perfectly clean room all the time, for example. Like having the right expectations for the age and then the right discipline for their age group.
And don't expect your children to change their behavior after one scolding. I think that's naive from parents, that they think that, okay, I told you that's wrong, and now you're never going to do it again, right? Well, no, don't expect that. Understand that children are children and they pay attention to what you say, and they may take it on themselves and internalize it and understand it, and okay, change their behavior, and they may not. And then
Yeah,
then you're gonna have to repeat the explanation in a different way until they get it.
yeah, yeah. And
You don't resort to violence. Don't resort to violence. That's it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Actually, like as adults, when you don't even look at children, look at yourself as adults. We understand that we should eat healthy, but we don't always eat healthy. We have sometimes those urges when we eat a unhealthy food because it tastes good. We are doing that as adults. How can you expect your children to be completely perfect just after one scolding? Just look at yourself. Like, we are humans, they are also humans. We make mistakes, they also make mistakes. They're making mistakes with a lot less experience than us. Why are you
That
surprised?
you bring up such a good point, right? Like, I feel like parents can have a different set of standards than they have for their children.
Yeah.
Just to give an example, I sell a medication that's for both adults and children. I'm in medical sales, and the compliance with the children is so much better than the compliance with the adults because the adults are on top of their children, making sure they're taking their medication and doing that. But for themselves, they're not always doing that. So I just think that's such an interesting point. We have these different expectations for kids than for us sometimes.
Yeah. And this is also something we see that parents dismiss their children of. This particular thing is not related to religion. This is all across the board. That when kids are not that dumb. Kids do observe you. Like, kids
Hmm.
actually kids observe you more than they listen to your
I would
words.
remove that. The word "that" in that statement is children are not dumb at all. They're sponges. They take up everything. They take up
Yeah.
everything, including what you don't want them to take up.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
Very
absorb everything. You're talking to your wife, etc., and then 6 months later they tell you something you told your wife 6 months before. Like, when did I say that? I yeah. And they can even tell you word for word, and I'm like, oh my god, you're right. That sounds like me. So they're gonna be
exactly.
children learn not only from what you want to teach, but how you act, how
Yeah.
you interact with with others, and what you tell your partner and your friends. And whenever they're around you, they're gonna be like absorbing everything. So, well, if you're gonna set yourself on a different standard, then your kid, be prepared to be called a hypocrite by your own son or daughter.
They'll call you
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah.
and they
They
do.
will. They
And they do.
definitely will. Yeah, they definitely will. You can't have cold drinks every night and then expect your kid to have only fruit juice because they are observing you. They will
Mhm.
either confront you or they will do it behind your back because and they have the excuse, oh, I've seen my parents do it, so it must be okay. Like,
Mhm.
Well, I'm a night owl. I'm a night bird. My wife sleeps early every night, etc. But I like to sleep late at night.
oh, I'm a night
And
owl too.
we taught our children, well, it's bedtime stuff like that. Yeah, that worked quite well until they were 10, like 11 or something. Like, but right now, if it's vacation, I cannot like the world make my children go to bed early. Like, no, no, like, yeah, I'm gonna be here for a while. I'll get up later in the morning because, well, it's
Yeah.
vacation, etc. And I cannot tell them a lot of things because, well, they're straight A's kids. So what I'm gonna tell them? So
Yeah. I totally get that. Like, I am a night owl too, and so what happens is, uh, I think it's common in Western societies as well. But when you start working, and you have your niece and nephews who are younger than you, so their parents uh, try to set you as an example that look, your older brother, sister, whatever the relation is, doing something and set to app as something to set examples for them. And I face that a lot because I'm like a young adult, so I'm closer to the children compared to their parents in terms of age and all. And I cannot guide them towards something that I'm not doing myself. Like, I cannot tell a kid that you should sleep early while I am sleeping very late because I'm a night owl. That doesn't work. For example, whenever I'm having a conversation with someone younger than me and they are looking for some guidance, I tell them that look, there are a few things you should not take inspiration from me. Like for example, I'm not punctual. Don't take punctuality inspirations from me. Just setting that out clear. I cannot tell you to go to bed early. I don't do that myself. Maybe that can work out. For example, like even right now, like it's 2:30 a.m. right now, and that's a good time for me because I'm a night owl. For the average person, they would be asleep by now. So yeah,
What?
you need to
It's
yeah, it's
2:30 a.m. right now where you are?
yeah.
Wow.
And I'm totally active here. It's not like I'm making an exception for this particular episode. I'm usually awake at this time. So yeah, I cannot. If I guide some younger person than me, I cannot tell them, "Oh, look, you should go to bed at 11," while I am staying awake till 3, 4 a.m. So it doesn't work out like that. Your children will observe you, no matter how hard you try to maintain a barrier between that. It doesn't work.
Mhm. Well, that's I mean, we talked about it before about parents also working together as partners being a good way to parent. We've heard through the years the wisdom of, parents being on the same page as it relates to their children and how they're going to discipline. That's important. So, working together, coming up with good, reasonable solutions, and even working with your kid. I mean, I've seen psychologists talk about, now this is for teenage kids, but talking about asking them, like, what do you think the discipline should be for what you did? And so I think the psychology is still new ideas are coming out. There's different philosophies, different parenting styles, so there's a lot of different ways you can parent children, but I think overall these are kind of general guidelines to guide in ways to think about healthy ways to think about parenting.
Yeah,
Yes, final thoughts.
yeah. I think that even if you're religious, even if you are, I don't know, Christian, Catholic, Hinduist, Buddhist, Shintoist, whatever, I think that thinking thoroughly how to educate your children beyond what any 2,000-year-old book says, I think that's gonna work better for you and for your children. Doesn't matter if you include, I don't know, the belief that a God exists. Okay, uh, just think about this: sex education, yeah, autonomy. Your children are different people that you brought to the world, and well, their well-being is your responsibility. Yeah, so think about that. But they are other people. They are persons
Yes.
that think on their own, and you have to understand how to, okay, how to be a guide, maybe, but you're not there to stifle them. You're not there to take decisions for them throughout their whole life. Yeah, you're there to guide them and to care for them because you brought a new person, a new human being into this world that's in need of your care and your love and your understanding. And well, he's not there in need for your violence. He's not there in need for your, I don't know, dogmatism in particular. Just care for your children, learn how to think your parenthood. That's right.
Well said.
I have one question for both of you, uh, which is, you know, religious parenting. Religion itself is not just the dogmatism and dumb shit like that. It's also a cultural identity. What I mean by that is, uh, if you look at Christianity, Christmas is not just a ritual, it's also a community thing where you celebrate and stuff. When you look at Hinduism, when you look at Bengali Hinduism, Durga Puja, it's not just about the ritual itself, it's also a celebration where a lot of festive things happen. And when you are parenting kids in a atheistic way, uh, how do you how do you handle that kind of interaction where, let's say, Christmas happens, let's say, social gathering in church happens, some kind of event, I'm not talking about Sunday school, uh, something like that. Like, how would you suggest parents handle their kids with that, irrespective of how religious the kids are and the religious the society is? The whole FOMO thing.
Such a good question, because you're right. Like now you've got the traditional part of religion, that's the cultural side, not just the dogmatic or the beliefs part. Um, I think that's going to be on an individual basis. Parents get to decide, or as a family, you can decide. For us, we're still doing Christmas just to kind of go along with the cultural norm, and so that all their friends aren't getting presents and they're not getting anything, things like that. But I mean, I think to that point, and part of my final thoughts that I wanted to add to is that I do think it's important for us as parents to equip our children to combat religion, not in a way that you're telling them what to believe, although that may be part of it, because a lot of this has been disproven by science and facts. So there's no like opinion on that. But I mean, just asking questions. What do you think? Just why do you think that, and what supports that idea? I think that's such a important part of preparing your children for life.
I agree. In my particular environment, my kids, fortunately, they're not on a secular private school, uh, in which, well, there are a couple of Muslim kids, a few Jewish kids, Catholics, evangelicals, atheists, etc. And my children tend to go get along with everyone, like nothing's happening. Like, what's what's wrong with that? Okay, yeah, he's a Jew, he's Muslim, he's Marxist. Yeah, my son has a friend who's Marxist at
Yeah.
mid
Wow.
school.
Ah, that's cool.
Yeah.
I have read the manifesto. I haven't read Das Kapital yet.
Oh
Uh,
well, that's huge. That's a huge rate. But
yeah,
still, I think that it's amazing. They like it happened when they were really small with homosexuality. Well, now they're teenagers, and they really couldn't care less if their friends are Jewish or Muslim or Christians or Catholic. No, they are their friends. The beliefs and rituals and community that they hold as families, etc. Those That's secondary. First and foremost, they're their friends. They don't care if they have a particular belief or another. They're just friends, and that's it. And I really love that because they reduce and eliminate this tribalism that entails no, no, no. You're a believer, you're not. You're a heathen, you're gonna go to hell. Stay away from me because you are of the devil. And that's intolerant by nature. And my I'm happy to say that my friends, well, my kids' friends, fortunately, so far, none of them are like that.
Awesome.
that's good.
Final thought from you, Zandria?
Ah, yeah. I mean, it's hard to give final thoughts because, unlike you guys, I'm not exactly a parent. But uh, I'll say it's similar to how you look at friends, which is that you need to understand that yes, they are your kids, obviously. You did bring them to earth in most cases, like unless you adopted them, which is also fine, by the way. But they are not you, they are different people. Like, as a parent, following up what Raphael said, that your role as a parent is to guide them, protect them, and give them something to live upon. But you should not, tell them who they should be. And this is not just applicable to secular parenting or atheistic parenting. It's applicable to parenting as a whole. You need to understand that you and your kids are different people. Just keep that in mind, and just guide them. They will be going through a lot of struggle, especially if you are bringing them up as atheistic parenthood, religious surrounding. So they will have a lot of confusion especially as a toddler and as a teen, when they're interacting with other people which where they might be out, you know ostracated a bit due to the differences in belief. So that might give a little bit of difficulty, but that's okay. Like, that's part of growing up. Just help them where they need to be, guide them where they need to be. Don't tell them who they you think should be, as long as they're not doing something criminal. And so there's a little bit of gray area there, of course. Like, tell your kids not to murder people, that's obviously a given. But yeah, just consider that they're different humans, and just guide them to be better people. That's all you can do as a parent.
Mhm. Well, Sandra, do you
Yes.
want to wrap us up? Close
Yeah,
us out?
I think I should. So, firstly, this has been a much longer conversation that we initially decided to, because it was fun interacting with people from other parts of the world, all different views and different journeys that they go through. So, thank you everyone for sticking to this point. And if you haven't already, you can subscribe to the Skeptic Hamlet channel. We have shows on most days of the week. Um, just a second. This is the Global Atheist episode. We also have a talk show. We also have a Women Atheist episodes. We also have Black Atheists, Black Free Thinkers on different channels. And if you haven't already, consider us. Yeah. So on Mondays we have the Black Free Thinkers. On Tuesdays we have Secular Soapbox. On Thursdays we have the Sunny Spot. On Saturday we have the Global Atheist, which is this, and Women Atheists United on a different time, but also on Saturday. And Let's Talk on Sunday, which is a call in, so you can literally call and give you your question and other stuff. And if you haven't already, you can consider supporting us by being a patron. That helps us keep the things running, maintain for all the softwares that we're using. Thanks for our ongoing patrons, which is Karen Butcher, Peck, Helen Green, Logan Fisher, Amanda McLeod, sorry, Eric Ozels, Rion, Denny Murphy, Dandy, Michael Weisman, Sunny Shell, Aaron Carlson, Phil Cunton, and there's one name I missed, which is Paul Camish. Yes, consider that. And you can find me as Zantiat on most channels, most social platforms. I'm a bit sporadic, but I also have a YouTube channel. And Anne, how can people find you?
I'm on YouTube, Apostate of Mind podcast, as well as on Facebook as Apostate Ann. And Xander, I want to
And
follow you right now.
yeah, sure. And Raphael, please.
Thank you very much. I'm the handle La Cantina del Ateo in YouTube and TikTok. I'm gonna start posting more stuff in my X, which is La Cantina Atea, and maybe sometime I'll come back to Facebook and Twitch, which have the same handle, but it's been a couple of years since I last posted on those. But
Cool.
the most active is YouTube and TikTok.
That's good. Yep. Once again, thanks everyone for being here. And it's quite late, and it's the weekends. Enjoy your weekends, and keep raising good kids.